Hello, you wonderful people of the Edinburgh TV Festival. I'm George Robinson, and I'm going to be leading you all through this discussion of disability isn't a dirty word, where we're going to be discussing the lack of representation and what we need to do in regards to disability. I'm with my lovely panel, and I'm very happy to let them introduce themselves. Hello.
Hello. Shall I start?
Yes, I think so.
I'm Deborah Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the Creative Diversity Network.
I'm Stu Richards. I'm a comedy writer and director, and I run a production company, Rockadale Studios.
Hi, I'm Shari Silva. I'm a production manager in factual TV and film, and I'm one of the co-directors of Deaf and Disabled People in TV.
I'm Kate Ansell. I'm an executive producer of factual and current affairs programmes. At the moment, I'm working for Firecrest Films, but I'm a freelancer.
Perfect. Well, I think one of the best places to start is with the lovely Deborah, and it's important to know why we're actually having this conversation. So, Deborah, you've got a wonderful presentation about what the CDN, the Creative Diversity Network, are doing to help disability representation.
Okay, so if we can, where do I start? When I first came into this job 5 years ago, it was clear that there was an issue about disability in the industry. So what we decided to do was dig down and look at research. Creative Diversity Network, for people that don't know, we run Diamond, the monitoring system. So we collect the data of who's on television, who's makes television, and what people think they see in television in the UK. So all of our work is research based. So what we decided to do was the project called Doubling Disability, the aim of which was to double the percentage of disabled people in the off-screen roles from 4.5 to 9% as monitored through Diamond. So that was about giving people credits and making sure that they got a job at the end of any scheme that was created by an industry, our members. We interviewed executives, we did a survey of disabled people, and we did some analysis of recruitment and how people recruit and retain disabled people. What was interesting was how, next slide, what was interesting was how we shared that information. So what we did was we got the findings, having worked with CAMEO research team, and we made an animation. So that is on our website that you can have a look at, the animation, which tells you exactly what you need to know, which is basically that the way to do it is to network, is to use third-party bridge organisations, incidentally, a bit like the Creative Diversity Network, work with us and do what we tell you, because I think that's really important, to employ disabled people, to have conversations about fear and anxiety and all of the things that came up. The project was for 2 years, and we were looking at how, next slide, we wanted to get an understanding of how far we travelled. The slide we have up now is a slide that looks at that came out of the fourth cut. So we publish on an annual basis data, and the fourth cut told us that from off-screen we moved from 5% to 5.8% in 4 years, and on-screen we moved from 6.2 to 8.2%. And the area of doubling disability was focusing on off-screen spaces and what off-screen looked like and how we were going to make that work. Next slide. So this is a beautiful diagram, and all of the reds you will see in disabled where urgent action is required. All of this came out of the fourth cut. That's from commissioning editor, director, producer director, writer, producer, executive producer, series producer, head of production. I could go on. We have 150 roles that we gather data on in Diamond, and every single one of them, the column. Elsewhere there are issues, but looking at disability, you can clearly see it is red, 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 red. Next slide. So what we then decided to do was, the commitment was for 2 years originally, so from 2018 to 2020. Obviously, the little thing called a pandemic got in the way of last year, so there was very little work and very little opportunity for disabled talent off screen. So what we've done is extended it by a year. But we wanted to have a sense check of whether or not we were heading in the right direction. So we appointed Dr. Marie Tidball and Catherine Bunting, who are independent as third-party consultants, and they did work for us, and they delivered, when was it, in June this year, the interim report on doubling disability, which basically we did a thematic literature review, we interviews with disabled people about their career pathways, and also analysis of diamond data. Next slide. Ultimately, it said that off-screen disability sat at 5.4% in 2020, when it started at 4.4%. So next slide. That's the stark reality. We'd moved 0.9%, not even 1% in a year, in 4 years. And if we carry on at this rate, it will be 2028 before we hit the target of 0.9%. Now, that's bad enough in and of itself. Next slide. If we continue completely and we look at the UK population of disabled people, which sits at 20% currently, it will be 2041 before we hit that 9% target at the rate we're going. Now, two things I want you to bring to your attention. The 20% is if nobody else becomes disabled or identifies as being disabled again for the next, 20 years. So that's going to happen, right? We're going to stay where we are percentage-wise. And the second one is we are 5% above the global statistic for disability and disabled people. So the We Are 15 campaign that came out this week, supported by the Paralympic, the Paralympics and the UN, stated that 15% of the globe is disabled. The UK is already 5% above that population. So can you imagine what it's going to be like if we continue to work the way we're working and not employing and engaging with disabled people, and giving them credits for work that they've delivered? Next slide. So what came out of that were 44 recommendations. I just want to be clear about that. But what we're doing, the main themes of the interim report were about representation of disabled people in broadcasting. We wanted to know where we were. We wanted to have a look at attitudes, awareness and knowledge about disability, disabled people and working in the industry. And also, we wanted to accelerate, see where we could put more pressure on and learn from what was already being done around work with disability. Next slide. So the attitudes, CDN obviously are leading in the space, and we want to carry on leading in the space, but we can't do all 44 recommendations, A, in one go, and B, on our own. So what we are doing, what we highlighted is the things that we want to do and focus on first of all. So we're looking at the attitudes and recommendations, we're looking at specific training, we're looking at encouraging people to budget for access provision and training development, and consider that as part of professional development. Next slide. We're looking at reasonable adjustment and access to work, which is one of the unlocking that. I think everybody would agree that if we are able to unlock that, we'll be in a much better place and position than we have been before. Next slide. We then want to look at entry, recruitment and retention. Really want to look at retention and how disabled people can go up in the industry instead of out of the industry. Next slide. For us, that meant starting right here as the official accessibility sponsor for the Edinburgh TV Festival this year and having conversations and hopefully building on the relationship that we've started this year and moving forward. There is a roadmap out there of those recommendations. Pick a recommendation, pick a bullet within a recommendation and start laying the tracks, because we can't do it alone. The expectation is that everyone else needs to do it, and the statistics speak for themselves. The last thing I will say is if you don't, you've got no one but yourselves to blame. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that. That was incredible, really. I think the next thing to do is to just open it up to the rest of you guys. And I'd say, what does this report, and how does it resonate with you guys? Yeah.
I don't know who wants to go first, really. Yeah.
Go for it.
Everyone's looking at me. I mean, it's all true. I've just done some research as well. The Lenny Henry Centre funded me to speak to other disabled people who'd been in the industry for a while, to talk about what the consistent barriers were. The thing that was really striking was how consistent everyone was. I spoke to I think about 90 people did my survey, and I spoke to about 10 of them, and everyone said the same thing, which is that the attitudes of colleagues and managers is really, really key. Everyone I interviewed, with the exception of one person, said they didn't think that their employers understood the Equality Act or what the legal responsibilities were. Which is quite shocking, because if no employers understood tax law in the industry, that would be perceived as a really big problem. You know, it's nice to be nice to disabled people, but there are legal responsibilities as well. The other thing that was really obvious is that when people need adjustments in the workplace, need to do their jobs in a slightly different way. At the moment, individual disabled people are sorting those out for themselves a lot of the time. Not all adjustments require funding, but when they do, again, the onus to sort that out is on disabled people. And employers sometimes help, broadcasters sometimes help, but there's no consistency through the industry. So you go if you're a freelancer, you go from job to job, and when you start a new job, you have to start a new conversation about what you need. And it's, you know, it's at the moment, it's very much down to individual disabled people.
Yeah, and it feels like from my experience is that a lot of it is just done from sort of people doing goodwill and just them sort of almost doing a favour, which that's not how it should be. It's nice that they do those things, but it should be more of a structural thing. Yeah. I think, Shari, what would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I was also working on yet another report, we love reports, with the help of Beck2, Bournemouth University and Equity. And to be honest, our findings were pretty much echo, you know, the findings from Deb's Superior report, Kate's findings from her report. Basically, exactly what you said, like employers just don't know what their legal obligations are under the Equality Act. And I think a huge problem with that is the nature of the television workforce. Like, as a production manager, I'm often the person who's onboarding new people, but I'm a freelancer and I've never had any proper HR training, any proper training about like the Equality Act or anything. It's all just stuff I've just had to learn myself. And I think that's such a huge problem with TV, because all the people in those roles tend to be freelancers, you're on short-term contracts, you're crewing up very quickly, and the production companies just aren't investing in that training and support for the people in those roles. So it's a problem for people, freelancers as employees and as in those sort of employer roles as well.
Yeah, I think it's there's a lot of pragmatism in terms of just like, all right, we've got a task to do, sort of just go in and try and do everything, as opposed to making more accommodating, friendly sort of atmosphere within the industry. Now, my next question is to you, Stu. You recently, that's how to say it, came out? Is that the best way?
That's a tongue-in-cheek way of putting it. Yeah, I said I sort of came out as disabled. First of all, I hadn't realised, frankly, that I was disabled, which is a sort of weird thing in terms of personal identity to sort of figure out. I barely heard the phrase invisible disability. When I did, I sort of looked up the Equality Act and read it, and I went, you know, bugger me sideways, I'm disabled. And that's quite a thing to realise, you know. So then I started telling people in the industry. I started speaking to commissioners and things like that. And to be honest, a few of them said, you know, well done, that's very brave. And I felt like a kid at a dentist or something for a short while. But to be honest, most of them just sort of went, yeah, all right, cool, thanks for telling me, you know. And a few people got in touch with me and said, oh, you know, thanks for sort of writing this. A few people with invisible disabilities saying that, you know, me too, I've never really sort of said anything about it. And I think, for me, if anything, the judgment that I've experienced in my career has been because I haven't been able to say that. I haven't told people that. You know, I think I sort of, I've always given off an aura of being a bit sort of, I don't know, loose or lazy or work shy. You know, I put my feet up when I'm at my desk because that's, you know, I have chronic pain basically, and so you know, occasionally I would go have a glass of wine at lunchtime to take the edge off the pain. Yeah. I mean, it's debatable whether that's a good way to deal with one's own pain, but the conversation for another time. Or I would find somewhere to have a little nap on my lunchtime because it's exhausting being in pain all day. And I think people, you know, I think that probably contributed to the many sackings I've had in this industry. But yeah, I think actually being able to be open about that and just to tell people, and most people have been pretty cool with it. You know, I think. Yeah. It's my experience anyway. For me, I think it's pressure. I think the more brilliant people like this sort of make a noise, follow them. As someone who runs a production company, follow the money, man. You know, look at the commissioners, look at the people who run the companies. They've got to pull their finger out of their backside. You know what I mean? That's if they have to do it, if they're forced to do it. If a commissioner, as where you get your money as a production company, tells you you've got to do something, you've got to do it, man.
Yeah, it's just
whether you're a good guy or not, whether you're a woke guy or not, whether you care about disabled people. Or, I mean, hopefully you do.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
I mean, hopefully you do. But even if you don't, if you're told to do something, you do it. And so that's why I think, this is brilliant. It's making a bit of noise about it, you know.
Yeah, it's just having the conversations, and that can help in a number of ways. So, you know, when it comes to invisible disabilities, or just confronting sort of structural issues that you see or problematic behaviours that you see. And I think that's the thing. What would you, from your guys' sort of perspectives and experiences, what would you change specifically? I mean, your wonderful report has got 1,000. But
well, I think first of all, I would encourage everyone to take their finger out of their backside, because I think that's not necessarily a good way to travel through the world.
No,
that's just my opinion. I think ultimately what you're looking at, you know, the way we look at it is industrial change and transforming an industry, and that requires everybody within the industry across supply chain to take responsibility and ownership for the bit of it that they can do something with.
Yeah.
And at the moment, you know, there are bits of it that aren't. You know, there are bits of it that are pretending it's got nothing to do with them. So the first thing is I would encourage everybody who has, you know, like everyone here and Stu, who sort of goes, this is something that's important and something we think needs looking at, to say so, and to say so publicly as much and as often as possible, because that's the first thing. You know, build the critical mass, and then the second is hold people to account. You know, the membership of CDN, you know, are all of the broadcasters, you know, the traditional broadcasters. So, you know, Channel 4, BBC, ITV, etc., Sky. And all of them, along with PACT and the production community, you know, they are held to account. You know, we agree things and we try to deliver things. And when they are, you know, that's what the interim report was about, was, OK, you've all said you're going to do these things. Let's have a look at where you got to 18 months in. And the caveat is obviously a pandemic, but you still managed to make TV programmes during a pandemic. So what was your commitment to doubling disability, and how much of that did you carry on? So that's sort of why I'm here, really. And I quite enjoy that. I quite enjoy asking people what they did. You know, I'm not a parent in my own right, so it feels like being a parent to sometimes to say, OK, so what have you done today, and checking their homework. And I quite like that. They don't, but
I would listen to you. I would listen.
They don't like that, but you know, I do it with it's a velvet glove.
Yeah, naturally. What would you guys say to people who are watching, both disabled and non-disabled, in regards to what they can do?
I think every decision that's made in the industry at every level needs to be made through a lens of disability. I think, talking about the pandemic, the first set of guidelines that came out about the pandemic didn't accommodate the needs of disabled people in any way. They were quite scary. They didn't recognise that some people work with support workers. They banned people in certain categories of vulnerability from location, which, if you're in those categories and you're a freelancer, that essentially meant you couldn't work. So those guidelines were published without any consultation of disabled people, as far as I'm aware. Having read them, I'd be very surprised if there was significant input. So everything at every point needs to be discussed with disabled people, and the impact on disabled people needs to be considered. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just can't be an afterthought. You need to be thinking about it the whole way through your production process. Like when you're recruiting people, when you're budgeting it, when you're scheduling it, like the whole way through. So often I work in productions where it's just, you know, they've cast it, they've found all these people, and then they're like, oh, quick, have we asked if they need anything? And it's like, that's too late.
Yeah.
That's just too late, you know? You can't then be crowbarring it in. And then that does feed this attitude that I think a lot of people have who are non-disabled, where they feel like it's this imposition, this extra step that you have to go to. And actually, if you were shifting your mindset and thinking about it from the very, very beginning, you wouldn't you know, you've factored it in the whole way through. It's not this extra kick, bollock, scramble at the end. And then you just wouldn't...
No,
I just too late. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I feel quite strongly about is the basic thing everyone can do is talk to their teams. It's not necessarily obvious that people are disabled. When somebody new starts, ask them what they need. Ask them if they, how they want to work.
The fear.
And
just grow up a bit.
And,
you know what I mean? It's
And when I spoke to other disabled people as part of my research, everyone said, again, it was very consistent. One of the best experiences they'd had is when a manager, when they started, just said, what do you need? How can I do? I don't want to get in the way, but tell me what you need. If it's nothing, fine, leave them alone. They'll get on with it. But just talk to people. Don't ignore it. If a disabled person doesn't need something, they will tell you.
Exactly.
I think there can be a fear of offence, and you know what? Sometimes you will offend someone. I do it all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, maybe you'll ask an inappropriate question, and maybe someone will do a tweet thread about you. But you know what? Grow up, deal with it. You know what I mean? Like is that the worst thing you've got to go through? A bit of a fear of offending someone? Just deal with it, press on, and you know. And frankly, I think we'd rather you know, hit the numbers whilst saying the occasional unintentional offensive thing than just sort of hid and didn't hire any disabled people, but never offended anybody. You know, like
exactly.
So what would you say to someone who, you know, perhaps has an invisible disability, they're going through chronic pain or whatever, and what would you say to them if they're thinking about, you know, coming out and disclosing it?
It's tough to say for every scenario, but I guess my own personal heuristic, I think, from now on would just be to be incredibly open about it, and more than open, bullish. You know, I think most people, you know, apart from a couple of comedy execs, are good people. In this industry, essentially, most of them are good people who sort of want to help you. So I would say be bullish about it. I know a lot of people find this hard, so I really can't stress enough how much I don't speak for everyone here. But be bullish about it. Mention it in your cover letter, even. You know, like just sort of and you know, and tell people what you need. I mean, in the ideal world, all production managers are saying, "Is there anything you need?" and stuff like that. But they might not. But I'd be bullish about it, because I think my own experience is that most people will sort of be okay about it, and they'll just go, "Okay, what do you need?"
Yeah. I mean, my obviously experience of disability is somewhat different in terms of, you know, it's a moment in like an injury, and then suddenly I'm, you know, sitting down more. But like when I came out, sort of visibly became disabled, I spent a lot of time sort of not really embracing it to some extent, and sort of not having those conversations with people and explaining what I need, and then it's sort of, you know, those feelings sort of bubble up of things, and it's just letting that valve go and just being open what you need, and people will be accommodating, and if they're not, make them accommodating.
Yeah, I think what I've done in the past is sort of, when I've got a new job, someone's, can I get a slightly nicer office chair, or can I get a thing that fits my back a bit more and supports it? And they try a few chairs, and then I sort of, you know, I'm all Billy Big. What's now, but you know, there've been times where I've been like, oh, do you know what? Don't worry, don't worry. And I sort of want to go back to that. Going, come on, tell them you are not sitting down until you get. I mean, do sit down, Stu, on the floor, but like until you get the chair you want and the stuff you need, and you know.
It's not easy. You know, I am a woman of a certain age, and it still happens. You know, I still turn up in places and go, "Oh God, I forgot my access," because nobody asked me. So I forgot what my access requirements are, because mine are fluctuating conditions, and you know, all of them are invisible. So you sort of go, "Oh God, I forgot to ask for this, or I didn't take account that." You know, revolving doors are a big thing for me. And whenever I turn up a building and they've got revolving doors, I just sit outside. I just sit outside, because I know, because you ring the buzzer for the automatic door and it goes nowhere. And I just sit outside or stand outside the door until the security guard comes and asks me what I want, and he usually opens the door at that point. It's like, "Oh, thank you," and I just walk in. You know, so you're always hiding it, and you get used to your impairment as you grow old, as your body changes shape, and all of those things happen. And I think the more we get to talk, the more we are able to talk about that, which is sort of what the on-screen space is about, right? You know, in our data, the writers and directors directors are underrepresented as well, which is the stories of disability are underrepresented. Not everybody wears a bib and sits in a wheelchair all day, and that's sort of the representation of disability that's consistent in television, and the telling of stories and the writing of those, the complexity of the stories. Where are the disabled villains? As in disabled people who are not nice, not Bond villains, right? Not a Bond villain who decided that, I'm going to kill the world because I've got one eye.
Yeah.
Give them no redemptive features.
You know what I'm saying?
This guy is just a bad guy. He's in a wheelchair.
Exactly.
He's awful.
Yeah.
You, George, although you could play the part when I write it.
Do you know what I mean?
But yeah,
people, stuff like that, because then you're getting fully rounded individuals. You're beginning to understand, and people can relate to that. Because trust me, everybody knows a disabled person that you want to sleep around with. Everybody knows somebody like that, and you never get to write those stories, and you never get to see that represented. And it's whether it's in drama or in Love Island or sorry, I don't know why I said that. But I don't. God, no, I don't watch that program. No, I don't watch that program.
If there's one thing you guys take away from this, it's that Deborah doesn't watch.
That's the takeaway. I do not watch Love Island. I watch Below Deck. But anyway, but do you know what I mean? And just all of that stuff. But also, Stu mentioned it earlier, comedy. The space for disability and comedy, I mean, for crying out loud, if you don't know how much money you can make off disabled people in a comedy space, you're not doing your job. You're not doing your job. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Seriously.
Yeah. Don't make it mawkish, man. Don't make me, I don't need to know about it.
No, you need to cane it in. You need to cane in money with disabled people and comedy because it's funny. And it's witty and it's stupid and it's all the things that television should be, and it does all that without apology. But if you are as a commissioner, or if you are as a production company, or if you are as a broadcaster not seeing that because you're scared that you will offend someone, or you don't know what this means, or I don't have a full understanding of cerebral palsy, so I can't work with anybody. I can't be near anybody with cerebral palsy. I don't either. But one of my best friends is, and he's in America and he's making Shakespeare. So it's like, yeah, whatever, mate, whatever. You fall down, all right, I'll pick you up. That's how it goes. And those sorts of things, but it just doesn't get seen. Sorry. Sorry. I'll step down off my little step now. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, you go.
Sorry, no, one thing I would say, because again, we're talking about disabled people taking the initiative and coming out and being bullish. Everyone who works in the industry should scrutinise their practices to make sure that they're not inadvertently excluding disabled people. I don't think anyone in the industry is deliberately closing the door on disabled people. But again, from my own experience and from talking to other disabled people, a lot of disabled people have kind of atypical career paths for various reasons because of their access needs. I changed genre a few times because that was how I made my way through the industry. Sometimes, for instance, recruitment practices are very, very narrow, and they want people who've only got 3 years experience doing that and 2 years experience doing that. And if you've had a slightly different career path, you're not able to apply for those jobs, or you're constantly competing with non-disabled people who've got more experience than you or are perceived as. So it's looking at how you're recruiting, it's looking at the way you're looking for staff, and just being as open as possible, some in less obvious ways. Of course, put a ramp in your office, but beyond that, look at your practices and think about who you're excluding and who you want to attract.
Absolutely. I think part of the point is just we're not doing this for no reason. The point is that we want to create the best art. We want to be the most creative people. We want to tell the best stories, and what we've seen in the past, particularly for things surrounding disability, is whether they get, obviously get told at all, but it's also when it is being told, it's the nature of those stories, and those stories are clearly told from the perspective of non-disabled people, and to some extent that's fair enough. But I think more and more it's becoming more and more apparent that that's boring, and I'd rather hear a more diverse range of voices telling these stories. That's my thought.
Can I add a quick thing on recruitment?
Yes, you can.
We've had a couple of commissions this year, right, that have been quite last minute. You've got to start hiring the next day. Margins are small, so I know what it's like to run a production company, and and finding diverse talent, to be inclusive, sometimes takes a bit of extra effort, a bit of money, extra time and stuff like that. So get looking the rest of your time. Yeah. Get yourself a roster of brilliant disabled talent, find out who there is. Don't go, oh, we've got a crew up because the cameras have got to be rolling in 6 hours, and I only know these three lovely blokes called Simon from Hertfordshire. Get up, put the time in, get a list in. So when you are ready to press go, then you know who to call, and take the responsibility, man. Just go and hire disabled people.
Yeah.
Do it.
Get it done.
Absolutely. Although I would say also, I think the pressure from commissioners is just like, because so many productions are in that situation where you just get a commission like that and you're like, oh, bloody hell, I've got to find a whole crew to get going. And that is what really scuppers any good intentions of that diverse talent if you're not doing that the whole year round. But equally, there needs to be some allowances from the channel side, like the commissioners, the broadcasters, they need to be helping us as well. Because it's all very well and good us doing that, but they often come to us saying, we're making a show about a black issue, the crew needs to be loads, we need to...
Loads of black people.
Yeah, that genuinely happened to me, and I've been like, but you have to give us the time, because it's a smaller pool of talent that might already be working. You've got to give us the allowance if you want that to happen. Same goes for disability and any intersection of any protected characteristic.
No, all I was going to say is that comes up a lot. People use it as a reason a lot for not having a very diverse crew. If you are a production company and your production deadlines are preventing you from hiring a diverse crew, it's not just me that should be telling the commissioners that. The production company should be challenging commissioners on it. Everyone needs to talk about this issue. It's always me, it's always Shari, it's always June, it's always Des. If you're a production company and you're struggling to hire diverse talent because of your deadlines, push back, talk to the broadcasters. Absolutely. It's everyone's responsibility. It's not just disabled people who should be moaning about this. Everyone should be talking about.
And I would say talk to us as CDN as well. That's one of the things we're there. We are evidence-based. All of our work is about evidence, and what is the evidence out there? What is the qualitative? What is the quantitative evidence out there? Because then we can build. You build critical mass, and we can then have a conversation about this being something structural and systematic, and an inconsistency in the industry that needs to change. And because we have who we have in the room, and because of who our members are, and because of what the members have committed to. And I think the other thing about what you were saying, Stu, about talent, it's like, you can't tell me that you only look for talent once you've got a commission. That you're not out there looking for talent all the time, for other things that you work on and going, actually, that's a good DOP. That's a good hair and makeup. That is fantastic.
But the exciting meeting people as well. Do you know what I mean? It's different people with different perspectives. It's really an exciting, interesting thing to do. It's not a labour. Surely that's why you go to the Edinburgh Festival, is to meet people who are at the top of their game, the best that you can, and you collect. I collect business cards. I give out business cards. Virtually no one contacts me because of who I am. They will after today.
But I contact people, and I will contact people a year after they've sent me an email, or a year after I've had a conversation with them, and go, something's finally come up. I'm interested in doing this, or we've got something coming down the pipeline. If you're not doing that already with your off and on-screen talent, then what are you doing? Yeah. You need to have a good stable, and that stable of people that you can turn to, that you can go to, that are dedicated, committed, fantastic, and can start when you need them to. That should be a massive pull, not the three Simons from Hertfordshire.
Yeah.
I've had enough of those guys.
I think now we're going to open it up to the floor, the virtual floor that we have. So I've got my wonderful little tablets here, non-specified. So I think we've covered a little bit of it, but this first one is, what changes would people like to see broadcasters or sort of indie filmmakers or TV thing? What's the big move that they need to take?
Hire some disabled commissioners, man. Where are they?
Yeah.
I know the talent pool's small, but
it's not as small.
It's not that small.
Experience, maybe, but I don't think the talent pool, the potential's there. It's just hiring people and letting them grow, you know? For me, it's all if an access provision line in your budget, right? And every time I say that to people, they go, "Oh no, I can't do that." I'm like, "Well, you can. You write the budget, right? You write the budget." And if a broadcaster says to you, "Oh, we don't want that," well, you know, you say, "Why don't you want that? Why don't you want that?"
I mean, the amount of accommodations that I see for other things in terms of humidifiers being put into people's trailers, it's just like you could afford things.
Bill, George, who's getting humidifiers?
I have 7. No.
No, but you're right. But if you say that's a broadcaster is once you've then explained. I think I don't. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's unlikely that a broadcaster is then going to go, no, we.
So when I was talking to people, and from my own experience, some disabled people had argued for having access lines in their budget and had got them, but it was really, really inconsistent. And I'll be honest, the ones who got the access lines in the budget were the really, really bolshy ones. And that's not fair. And the broadcasters need to agree that they're going to do that. The indies need to ask for it. As I say, what's happening at the moment is disabled people are floundering around trying to sort it out. There just needs to be a consistent approach. Access to work can fund some things. It's a grant system for if you need support in the workplace. It doesn't fund everything. But access to work and the broadcasters and the indies can work together to figure out a coherent system.
Yeah. And even frankly, before a commission, before the commission happens, commissioners should be saying to people in meetings, look, we want to know what talent you're looking into and what. And I think, in fact, I had a meeting with a commissioner at the BBC recently who said exactly that to me, and I was like, brilliant, I was fucking like.
And then you go, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm doing a panel in a few weeks. I'm sure there'll be someone on that.
Yeah. No, there's nobody out there, surely.
But yeah, I guess. I don't know. I guess there's probably hard pressure, tangible things that Deborah knows far more about than I do. I'm talking about sort of soft pressure. I think that could always be there.
And Shari, what do you think?
I think the budgets is such a big one, and I think from my perspective as a production manager, I think budgets are very, very squeezed at the moment, certainly in factual, and they just need to be giving us more time, more money. Those are essentially the same thing in television, and they need to be letting us put those provisions in from the start, because otherwise it's just not going to happen. Like, so often I read a budget and it's like subtitling, closed captioning is an afterthought, and it's like, why is that not already in there? That should just be standard, Yeah. It's that mindset of like, this is the way things are. We're all inclusive all the time.
That's it. I think that's the thing that people need to take away from this is it's possible and it needs to happen because it's for the benefit of the whole industry. Well, guys, thank you all so much, and I hope everyone watching has enjoyed this. I definitely have. But yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.